Wager Detective here, May 27th, 2026, and we're going to cap this Minnesota Twins versus the Chicago White Sox game. Wager Detective put up 2 Wager Detective reports today, called the Toronto Blue Jays game. The Toronto won 2-1, sticky game. I didn't like laying the chalk, laid the chalk, minus 152, and Toronto won late on a home run by the Blue Jays late in the game to break the tie. And then Wager Detective called the under full game in the Washington Nationals game versus the Guardians. I did also call the Guardians to win by a run and a half. The Guardians were up 3-1 in the 9th inning, and then the Nationals got a run across. Game ended 3-2. So the Wager Detective report, no matter how you slice it, is just getting better and better. You're going to have to play around with the variance of wins and losses because they are part of the game. But the Wager Detective report is turning out to be a massive gold mine for people that are tuning in and checking out the report. So be sure to follow Wager Detective on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Set alerts on Twitter. And be sure to subscribe on YouTube. And I really appreciate any and all support that I get. Wager Detective just getting started. Let's get into this cap right here with the Twins taking on the White Sox. All right, the Twins this year, 27-28 on the year. They're 7-3 in their last 10. They're heating up. 12-14 on the road this year, and they're 5-7 in one-run games. This is going to be the finale, or no, this is going to be the third game of the 4-game set between these two teams. Both teams have won 1 game apiece so far in this series. As we look into what the Twins are doing, the Twins are 2-7 in their last 9 versus the White Sox. 7 over and 2 under in those games. Average score coming out to 10.88 runs per game average. And then if we look at the Twins are 4-5 the last 9 at the White Sox. 6 over and 3 under. So last 9, Twins are 2-7 versus the White Sox. Twins last 9 at the White Sox, 4-5. Between the last 9 overall and the last 9 at, it's coming in at 13 over and 5 under. So 13 over, 5 under between these two teams, last 9 overall and last 9 at the White Sox. And the last 9 at the White Sox, the Twins are scoring 3.66 runs per game to 4.88 for the White Sox. Comes out into 8.55 runs per game average. Now, if we look at the Twins this year, road night games, they're 5-7, 10 over, 2 under. They're scoring 5.16 runs per game to 6.58 for their opponents. It's coming out to a 79 to 62 run differential in the minus for them. So they're minus 17 runs in the run differential department in 12 road night games this year. And again, they're 5-7 in road night games this year. In those night games, in those 12 night games, they've scored 5+ runs 6 times. They've scored 2 or less 4 times. So it's more feast or famine for them, right? Road night games, Twins. They've scored 5+ 6 times in those 12 games, and they've scored 2 or less 4 times. So there's really no middle ground with them. They're going to score or they're not. Now, their opponents in their 12 road night games this year have scored 5+ 7 times, and their opponents have scored 2 or less only 1 time in those 12 night games. So if the Twins don't score, the other team usually does. And like I said, in 12 road night games for the Twins, their opponents have scored 5+ 7 times. Now, the Twins are 7-2 in their last 9 overall. They're really heating up. Those wins have come against Miami, Houston, Boston, and the White Sox. And 5 over and 4 under in the Twins' last 9 games. They're scoring 4.44 runs per game average to 3.22 for their opponents. And in their last 9 games overall, the Twins have scored 5+ runs 5 times. Now, their opponents in their last 9 games overall have scored 3 or less 4 times. So they're really getting in control of their team. When they win, they're winning by more than a run and a half. And average score over the last 9 games, average is 4.44 for the Twins and 3.22 for the Twins' opponents over their last 9 games. Now, versus the AL Central this year, they are doing pretty good. They're 8-4. They swept Detroit earlier this year in a 4-game set. So they're 8-4 against the Central, 6 over, 6 under. They're scoring 4.5 runs per game to 3.83 for their Central Division counterparts. That comes out to 8.33 runs per game average. Now, on the mound for the Twins is going to be Connor Prelip. He's a lefty. And in the Twins' last 5 games where Prelip starts, they are 2-3, 4 over and 1 under in those contests. In Prelip's last 5 starts, 25 innings pitched, 18 hits, 11 earned runs, 12 walks, and 4 home runs. That comes out to a 3.96 ERA, a 1.20 whip, and he's giving up 1.44 home runs per 9 in his last 5 outings. Now, the Twins are 2-4 when Prelip starts this year. 29 innings pitched, and that he has a 4.03 ERA with a 1.21 whip. So the Twins 2-4 when Prelip starts this year. Whip is about the same for the year-long average as it is over his last 5. The ERA is a little bit more over the year-long average than it is over his last 5. Now, Prelip is going to be on 4 days rest, where he has started 2 times this year for the Twins, and in those games the Twins have won 1 and lost 1, and the score is an exact flip. In one of those games on 4 days rest where Prelip started, they won 11-4, and in the other game that they lost 4-11. So it's feast or famine for Prelip when he starts on 4 days rest. This year when Prelip starts on 4 days rest, 10 innings pitched, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, giving up 2 home runs and 5 walks. Comes out to a 4 ERA, 0.9 whip, and he's giving up 1.8 home runs per 9 over those 2 games. So I expect there to be runs here, right? And I know that the other pitcher, David Sandlin, we'll get into him and what he's done in the minor leagues this year, but I just got a feeling both these pitchers are going to get guys on base, and it's going to be a matter of whether these guys' lineups can get one over the fence. And you look on the screen there, Buxton can hit it out. Josh Bell, he's a savage. You got guys on in the White Sox lineup. I mean, you got Murakami. He's the main guy over there that can really just plug you. But a lefty versus lefty is going to be interesting. So let's get inside the White Sox and what they're doing this year. The White Sox this year, 27-27 on the year. They're 5-5 in their last 10. They're 15-11 in home games this year, and they're 10-6 in one-run games. So they're better than the Twins if this game gets close, comes down to the last, at bat. 10-6 in one-run games for the White Sox, whereas the Twins are 5-7. So a pretty disparaging difference there between those two scenarios for those teams. And again, White Sox 15-11 at home, and the Twins 12-14 on the road. So this cap, outside of the pitching uncertainty, is leaning towards the White Sox for wager detective early. Now, as we look at the White Sox this year, they are 8-6 in home night games this year, 11 over and 3 under. So between the 12 night games, road night games for the Twins, and the White Sox 14 home night games this year, you combine those two together, and that's 16 over and 10 under. So you can see why Wager Detective is putting the pieces of the puzzle together and doesn't really see that 7.5 that it's at. It says 8 on the screen here, but when I started this cap, it was 7.5, minus 122 to the over and plus 100 to the under, and both teams coming in at minus 108 on the money line. So the books don't know which way this is going to go, but from my point of view, right now it's looking like that over could be tantalizing. Okay, so again, the White Sox 8-6 in home night games this year. They're scoring 5.35 runs per game to 5.28 for their opponent. And as we said, the Twins in 12 road night games, they're scoring 5.16 and giving up 6.58. And in the White Sox in 14 home night games, they're scoring 5.35 to 5.28. So in those 14 home night games for the White Sox, they've scored 5 plus 11 times. They've only scored 3 or less 2 times. So guys, you got to really think about that. In 14 home night games for the White Sox, they've scored 5 plus 11 times. Their opponents in that split have scored 5 plus 8 times. But their opponents have also scored 3 or less 5 times, whereas in those splits for the White Sox at home, they've only scored 3 or less 2 times. So again, this is all leaning towards Wager Detective, kind of leaning towards the White Sox. Let's get into this cap further. The White Sox 4-5 last 9 overall. So they're doing worse than what the Twins are. We said the Twins are 7-2 in their last 9, and they're scoring 4.44, whereas the White Sox are 4-5 in their last 9, and they're scoring 4.33. So they're right there in the margin of scoring. But here's the difference there. In the last 9 for the White Sox, they've given up 5.33 runs per game average, whereas the Twins have only given up 3.22 runs per game average. But again, when I factor in the fact that the White Sox have scored 5+ runs 11 times in 14 home night games, I think there's going to be runs aplenty. I think Prelip isn't really showing that he's going to be able to stop this lineup. He's got a 4 ERA, and he's given up 1.44 home runs per 9 in his last 5 outings. 18 hits in 25 innings pitched and 11 earned runs for Prelip, so in his last 5 outings. So when you factor that in, I just see this game getting over the total. Now, when we get into what the White Sox have done against the American League Central, they're 6-3. So both these teams playing good inside their division. We said the Twins are 8-4 in their division. They swept the Tigers. And we look at the White Sox, they're 6-3 in the division, and they swept the Royals. So depends on what you see as the better sweep there, sweeping the Royals or sweeping the Tigers. So again, the White Sox 6-3 last 9, swept the Royals this year. 5 over, 4 under in those games versus their AL Central counterparts, and they're scoring 3.55 runs per game. The 3 runs per game average for their opponent comes out to 6.55 runs per game average. And in those 9 night games versus their division, they've scored 5+ 4 times, and their opponents have scored 5+ 4 times. So something to keep in mind there, right? When we're looking at this game. So we're going to look at this pitcher, David Sandlin. And he's coming up from the minor leagues, and in AAA and AA, between those two, 16 innings pitched, 12 hits, only 1 earned run, but 11 walks, and 26 strikeouts in 16 innings in the minors. He's got an 0.56 ERA, 1.44 WHIP, and he's walking 6.18 batters per 9. So the key here is going to be traffic on the bases. It seems that's the theme going into this game. Both pitchers probably going to, your first game jitters. Are you going to come out? Twins are swinging a hot bat. Are they going to let a guy from the minor leagues come up and just all of a sudden shut them down? And all it takes is a couple crooked innings by this team, and you got 5 runs on the board, and only looking at maybe 3 more to get over that 7.5. So Wager Detective is going to call it. I'm sorry I didn't have more on the pitcher Sandlin, but there's really not much. I looked into a couple of his stats. He was 9-4 in college in 18 games started, and again in Double and AAA, 16 innings pitched this year, 12 hits, 1 earned run, 11 walks stood out, 26 Ks. So he's either walking guys or striking them out, but he's not giving up runs. And I think with everything that we've looked at, I do believe that the White Sox will be the play here. I think they got a better bullpen. I think if it gets sticky late, we said they're 10-6 in 1-run games, where the Twins are 5-7 in one-run games, and they just won yesterday 5-3. And really, I mean, listen, the White Sox have only scored 3 runs in both games, and I think there's an uptick there in order. And I do believe that is the call here. And Wager Detective is going to call it. We're at the 13-minute, going on the 14-minute mark, Wager Detective calls the White Sox money line, -108, and the game to go over 7.5 at -122. Let's see what the line looks like now. Let's see if there's been any movement on that, if we could get a clearer picture of what's going on here with this game. If my phone will allow me to. And if it won't, we'll just not look at it and we'll just go with it. Okay, so there we go. It's up to 8 now. That goes to show you. It was 7.5 when I started this cap, which was about an hour ago. It's up to 8. That tells me that the sharps are on it. Sharps agree. And that's a signal. That's called a signal from the sharps, right? They are coming in. They're moving the line. If it's going to go over 7.5, it's got to land on 8. And guess what? You're getting a better number, right? You're only laying -110, and if it pushes, so what? But you're picking up, instead of it being -122 over 7.5, you're getting -110 for it to land on 8, and you get a push, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's the call here. Wager Detective calling the White Sox Money line, -108, and the game to go over 8. This is Wager Detective. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Set alerts. Drop comments in the chat, whatever platform you find me on. And more than anything else, know this, guys. Wager Detective loves all his fans, and he's just getting started. I'll talk to you soon.